Hello, Professor.
It's been a while since we talked, and a lot's happened. It seems to me that it all proves that my um, idea that we're passing through the crucial phase of globalization is being more and more supported by events. It's really quite amazing what is happening. I just attended a conference which was organized by the School of Veterinary Medicine here on food waste,
Oh,
first of its type, funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And it was an amazingly intensive 2 days where we had a range of very interesting speakers who covered every aspect that I could think of while I was listening to it, every aspect of the problem of food waste. And then when after I'd listened to the wrap-up, which was very well done with all the figures and everything, it suddenly occurred to me that there's one question that nobody asked, which is, why is it happening now? And has it always been happening? And if not, why now and not before? And is it getting worse? And people don't put things in a temporal context.
hmm
They think everybody still thinks in terms of situations, and they assume if there's a problem, it's a problem that has to be dealt with by dealing with the situation, not by dealing with the process.
hmm hmm
And so as everybody was filing out, I started grabbing people, telling them what they needed to think about. And I don't know whether they're going to turn it into a book or not, but I'm going to, since I work very closely with a lot of the people who organized it, I'm going to tell them why food waste is happening now, and that it's much bigger problem now than it's ever been before, and it's a bigger problem in some parts of the world than others. And of course, it has to do with the rate of social change, which is disrupting all the traditional practices. I mean, the person who organized the conference grew up in China during the famine that was caused by the Cultural Revolution.
hmm
I grew up in England during the war when we were all on rations and nobody wasted anything,
hmm hmm
because if we did, we'd have to eat peanut butter from America.
Right,
Uh,
right,
and, we,
right.
and that didn't taste like butter at all.
No. So the conference focused on increasing rates of food waste.
Everything you need to know about how waste is happening today,
hmm
and ways in which maybe we could do something about it.
Okay.
And I'm going to argue that the reason that waste is such a bad problem today is that food has ceased to be simply a medium of social interaction, which it was when I grew up. Nobody ate on their own when I grew up. Somebody was managing the meal, and no food was thrown away. And now, of course, I wonder what the percentage is, and of course it's impossible to tell, but I imagine well over half the food that is eaten by people eating on their own.
Yeah, I suspect you might be right. Yeah.
And the problem is that our institutional patterns of behavior have not kept up with the way our patterns of social interaction are changing. And
So excuse me. So in this instance, the fact that, just to pick a number, that approximately 50% of the people are eating alone,
mm,
the institutional behavior needs to catch up to
well,
this.
yeah,
How would it,
because in
like,
the
how would it
past,
catch up to that?
well, we're not sure we can't predict the future. We don't know what globalized society is going to be like, but certainly all the current institutions, including, I think, the institutions that form the U.S. government, are going to have to change in order to work in society as society is becoming,
hmm hmm
because the intensity of interaction that we all are engaged in every day is amazing in
Right.
comparison with what we grew up with, what people our age grew up with.
hmm
So, but nobody thinks of these things yet. Nobody
No,
thinks in
no.
terms of of the problem of understanding today in terms of how we got to where we are today. And of course, you know that we've heard me say things like this before. This is just simply a new context. But it's interesting that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has put aside a lot of money to fund this sort of meeting to deal with food waste, because it was proved, obviously, in the conference that if we didn't waste any food, we wouldn't have a food problem.
I mean,
We,
is that on a global
yeah, we
equation?
waste more food than is needed by the people who are undernourished.
Isn't that something?
The conference finished up with four high school students from West Philadelphia talking about school lunches, and the way the quantity of school lunches, quantity of food that is wasted in school lunches, and why and how. And then four undergraduates about the waste on the Penn campus.
Oh yeah, I can dimly remember the waste in college cafeterias. Yeah, yeah,
It's really it's
yeah.
interesting that people are aware of it and they're looking at it, but they think that we've got to do something to change people's behavior. And of course, I'm going to tell them that you're not going to change people's behavior.
No, no.
But the problem is going to solve itself as we gradually catch up with the fact that society is changing, and as the unevenness between the way it's changing in different situations evens out.
Hmm. Anthropologically speaking, if you will, I mean, when did when was the moment when you think people began to waste food? I mean, there was a time for the first 5,000 years or so where food was scarce, right?
Hmm.
And
Well, obviously, when people were not producing food, they didn't waste food.
hmm.
They just left it where it was and didn't eat it.
Right.
And when they started producing food 10,000 years ago, not very long ago,
Hmm.
it all became, the eating of food became even more social, because
Hmm.
it had to do with relationships that were formed in the production of food.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that continued and society gradually became more and more differentiated.
Hmm.
People with land were the important people. The people without land had to work on it and were the unimportant people.
Hmm.
And the more important you were, the more food you prepared for eating, and all the people that depended on you ate the leftovers.
I see. Right.
Um,
Right.
and that's essentially the way things worked into the 20th century,
Hmm.
in according to different cultural patterns in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And now it would be interesting if we could find records of how much food was wasted in big hotels in New York and London in the first half of the 20th century.
Hmm.
And I'm sure some was wasted, but probably nowhere near as much as is now wasted.
You know, it's funny because I'm thinking back. Two things are coming into mind: the whole idea of the social aspects of food, and the idea of the wastage. I'm thinking back to Jeremy McInerney, who wrote a book
Mhm.
called "Cattle of the Gods," in which he was able to trace back the beginning of the meat eating history of Greeks to the eating of formerly sacrificed cattle
Mhm.
in religious celebrations. There would be so much meat left over that for days, whole towns and cities could feast off this meat.
Mhm.
So that addressed two of the instances. It had the symbolic communal aspect of the ceremony of the meat eating. And then secondly, of course, it also provided the food itself. And it didn't go to waste.
Yeah.
Everybody ate it.
Well,
But
when I was living among in rural situations in Iran and Afghanistan a few decades ago, we ate very well, but no food went to waste.
mhm.
Uh,
It's a real, it is a big problem in the industrialized West.
yeah.
It is.
Uh, but the problems began um, in the commercial sector, and then got much worse in the private sector, I think, because now I think most food is wasted in households.
Hmm.
When the family began to disintegrate, and uh, I mean, it amazes me now because I remember when I was growing up, nobody ate on their own,
Hmm.
and the meals were the main social occasion for the family
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
course of the day,
Yeah.
and that's no longer the case.
No longer at all. No, that's very interesting.
And so there's no planning.
There's no planning, which leads to overbuying and
Yeah.
not much thought going into the creation of the meal. And yeah, you're right.
I
Interesting.
saw actually an app is being created by now. Who is I forget who's creating this app, but it's going to be available for all of us sometime over the holiday, which will make it possible for you to just click on the app in your iPhone, and it will tell you what you have in your refrigerator
Oh my.
in order to try to stop you buying things that you already have.
Well, that's actually a pretty good idea, come to think of it. Yeah, that's very interesting.
It all has to do with this the world of smart
Yes,
objects.
yes. So tell me what you think about going on geopolitically these days in the world.
Well, the number of people who've been killed by jihadists in the past month. Did you see this? And
No,
the
what was the number?
BBC,
No, I did not.
the BBC has something like 7,000.
Wow.
Five. I hope I'm remembering the figures correctly, but it's this order of magnitude anyway. 5,000 of whom were killed by the Islamic State. Um, the BBC World Service on the web today has a special section on uh, jihadist savagery, and it's very interesting because and I thought it was after all the BBC is journalism,
Hmm.
and most journalism is not academically very well informed. But there was nothing in this that I would disagree with,
Hmm.
and it had a lot to do with Islam as the politicization of Islam as a response to the Western, what's been going, the influence of the West on the Islamic world. Um, and well, I mean, everything in the Middle East seems to be getting worse at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the situation in Israel is also getting worse, and that is a further incentive for the savagery among the jihadists.
Hmm. I think that the next few months are going to be critical because I think that Obama has basically indicated that since he has no more elections to face, he's really going to follow his instincts on what's going to need to be done. I wouldn't be surprised with some of the moves that they made fairly overtly,
Hmm.
insofar as supporting the Syrian rebels. I wouldn't be surprised if some back channel agreement is reached with Turkey to begin to get them to come over the line and begin to do things.
It's going to be very interesting to see whether he manages to forge some sort of agreement with Turkey, because you see what Erdogan has done the last couple of days.
What in
He's
particular?
decided to Islamize the educational system in
I,
Turkey.
I did see that. It's going to cause an uproar over there.
Uh, I mean, it seems as though he's not actually moving closer to collaboration with the Western world.
Hmm.
Obama has a very difficult 2 years ahead of him because he seems to have more or less given up the idea of bipartisan collaboration, if it was ever a real possibility.
I don't disagree with him. I mean, but you can't possibly hope to achieve anything with
Hmm.
Congress. I was very dismayed at Senator Feinstein, who's a Democrat, insisting on the release of that report. I mean, that's a disaster.
You think that's a disaster?
Well, I think on one ground it's wonderful. It's great that the light has been shown on misdeeds. But on the other hand, if you're an American service person overseas, you're not in a good spot.
That's true, but and of course, they immediately issued instructions for reinforcing security. Whether they can do it sufficiently well, I don't know. But
You'll be pleased to know that Dick Cheney was quoted today as saying the Senate report was a load of crap. And in fact, he's going to appear on Meet the Press on Sunday morning to defend the administration of George W. Bush's record.
uh, I don't think he's very good at that.
No, I think it'll be another disaster for him.
It's really amazing, absolutely amazing. But I think that the only way that America can recoup what it lost from what everybody knows is to come clean. So I'm very glad that they've done it. It just amazes me that it could have happened in the first place.
It is amazing, and really, I guess what it does. We spoke the last time when we were talking about the Chinese Washington climate deal, and
Hmm.
we were talking about what might be known to the leaders that's not known to everybody else, and
Hmm.
it sort of was a recognition of the sort of dual planes of existence that exist between the common people, if you will, us, and the people who are making the decisions. And it really, the incident of the torture and everything, really brings you back to what must have been going on between Bush and Cheney and Rice and Rumsfeld in those first 2 weeks or so after September 11th. I mean, the hysteria that must have been just all consuming.
Yeah, yeah, because nobody had any idea what to do about it.
Yeah, not that it's an excuse, but it really,
Yeah.
someday that
But
book will be written.
the reason Cheney is, I mean, I think that Cheney and Bush fell out
They did,
halfway through the second term,
supposedly,
right?
supposedly.
And that's probably what is behind Cheney's reaction now.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Uh,
One final question. What did you think about the globalization aspects of the 76 people arrested in the London shopping mall yesterday for wearing the T-shirt saying "I can't breathe" and protesting American police brutality?
well, I had not heard that and hadn't seen it, but I find it surprising that they should be doing that in London. Um, and I wonder what they think they're trying to achieve by doing it in London. But I mean, it obviously has something to do with the closeness between London and New York.
Hmm.
I don't know what the figures are for the number of people that move back and forth between London and New York in the course of a normal year, but it's pretty enormous.
Hmm.
Um, so, but everything that happens anywhere now has responses everywhere else. I mean, the removal of the barricades in Hong Kong
Yes.
and the conclusion that the Chinese government won is being interpreted by some people out there as no, we won because it affected the Taiwan election and it's not going to go away. We made our mark in history and we've made it clear that the Chinese government can't get away with this without people paying attention. Can't be swept under the carpet.
Well, I can see that point. They certainly. I was impressed with the London incident because it was a very clear example to me of this transnational kind of conveyance. And the other point and then I'll stop on this, is that Prince William and Kate Middleton were present at a basketball game in New York. That a number of the players, this was on Tuesday evening, were wearing "I Can't Breathe" T-shirts in
Oh,
protest.
really?
So,
Yes, I saw that they were in New York. I have no idea why they were in New York, but I certainly thought that they what should I say? They made good. They were very presentable
yes,
in the photography.
yes, they did Blighty proud. So, yeah.
But the other thing is the immigration issue, which
Oh,
is we should not ignore, though maybe we'll talk about it more next week because it's not going to go away. And it's very interesting that Cameron is in such an awkward position now because he has all the right ideas, but he has to be very careful what he says because of the election that's coming up before very long.
He has to be very careful about what he says.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Okay,
right. Professor, thank you very much.
See what happens in the next few days before we meet next week.
You got a deal, sir. Thank you.